any other country in the world. Yet people in Norway, Switzerland, Canada, the UK, France, and other developed nations all outlive us. Why are we not living longer despite all the money we spend on doctors, hospitals, and drugs? Well, about 6 months ago, I began to research for answers to that simple question. The results I've uncovered will shock you. As you're about to see, you and I, along with the rest of America, have all become secret guinea pigs in a massive 20-year-long health experiment, all thanks to a dangerous alliance between the government and corporate America. Now, before you start guessing, what you're about to see has nothing to do with the drug industry, our healthcare system, or anything else you're likely thinking. This is a shocking story about our health that you've never heard before. In short, what I found is that the food we're eating could be poisoning us. I'm talking about food you probably have in your kitchen, in your refrigerator, right now. Food you're going to eat tonight. Food you're going to feed your spouse, your children, and your grandchildren. And food that could be killing us early in the name of corporate profits and political power. Did you know, for example, that in 1998, an unprecedented coalition of scientists, religious leaders, health professionals, and consumers sued the government? This lawsuit, filed in federal district court, forced the FDA to turn over 44,000 pages of internal government memos into the public domain. Memos that our government never wanted you to see. Memos that reveal shocking proof of this health scandal that could be making you and your family sick. It's a conspiracy that runs right from a few massive food-producing companies all the way up to the highest of ranks, the government of the United States of America. It's a tangled web of corruption that keeps politicians in power and safeguards the profits of certain corporations while putting your life, my life, and our families' lives at risk. And they've managed to keep this scandal a secret for the past 15 years. But today, I'll expose all the details. I'm going to name names and tell you about the content of one little-known internal document I've uncovered from food companies with files so secret that they're labeled confidential, read, and destroy. These internal memos are the proverbial smoking gun, documents that prove the food we're eating may be causing us and our loved ones to die early deaths despite having some of the world's best healthcare. And most importantly, I'm going to show you simple steps you can take today to opt out of the game they've planned for us, to take your health back into your own hands, to stop poisoning your body with their modified food that's likely making us sick. These are steps I'm taking for my own wife and 4 kids. And if you want to live a longer, healthier life, I recommend you take these steps immediately. Now, I can't guarantee they will make you live to 100 years old, but I can promise that you'll be greatly better off than those who ignore this message and continue to eat potentially dangerous food. And believe me when I say, if you close this window, there's a good chance this presentation may not be here when you come back. There are powerful players that hope you never see this message, and they're not going to be happy that I'm blowing the whistle on their game. Look, I'm not asking you to believe me right now. I'm simply asking that you give me the next few moments of your time and approach what you're about to see with an open mind. Once you see all the evidence and the scientific data we've uncovered, you can make up your own mind on whether you think we're slowly being poisoned in the name of power and profits or not. As for me, I've already begun taking the steps I'm about to show you to better my life. Hi, my name is Doug Hill. I live in Northern Virginia with my wife and 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, all in their late teens and early 20s. And I know all this sounds pretty daunting, but believe me, I have no interest in trying to scare you. As the director of an independent research group called the Laissez-Faire Club, it's my duty to sound the alarm bell loud and clear. My team is on an important mission to show folks how to live happier lives with greater freedom, health, and prosperity, no matter what Obama, the government, and their accomplices in Washington do. We've already exposed investment secrets from Wall Street insiders, health secrets Big Pharma hopes you never discover, tax secrets the IRS doesn't want you to know, and more. And now we're blowing the whistle on the food industry. For example, did you know that according to a study from the Harvard Medical School, some types of milk could cause as much damage to your health as smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day? Think about that. Smoking 4 packs a day is almost certain to lead to an early death. It's ridiculous. And it's something even the most aggressive chain smokers don't do. Yet I'd bet not 1 in 1,000 people know that a specific type of milk may be just as harmful to your health. And there's a good chance this milk may be in your fridge right now. It was in mine too, until I came across the research you're about to see. In just a moment, I'll show you the specific 4-letter word you need to look for on your milk jugs. And if you're drinking milk with this word on the label, I urge you to stop immediately. Here's a different way to think about it. Cigarettes became really popular in America in the early 20th century, between 1910 and 1920. And the negative health effects of tobacco were not initially known. For decades, lots of scientists and government agencies told us tobacco was safe. In 1944, for example, the American Cancer Society said that no definite evidence exists between smoking and lung cancer. It wasn't until 1967 that a Surgeon General's report concluded that smoking is the principal cause of lung cancer and found evidence linking smoking to heart disease. In other words, it took more than 4 decades for the population to realize tobacco was dangerous. During all those years, the tobacco industry publicly denied that smoking causes cancer. But the truth is that the big tobacco companies knew it all along that its products could cause cancer, and they just lied to protect their profits. Can you imagine how many people died because they believed in the tobacco industry? There's something similar going on today, but now this new critical danger is hidden within our food. And here's the really sad thing. I'd guess that more than 99% of Americans are putting themselves at risk simply because they don't know the truth about our food supply. They don't know we're eating foods far away from what nature made. They don't know that these modified foods could be causing cancerous tumors that silently grow within them. But you and your family don't have to be victims. In the next few minutes, I'll give you simple food solutions that will put you and the people you care about on the way to abundant health. For example, I'll tell you the details about the one thing that could be silently killing you and 10 natural ways to fight it. 10 foods you should never eat. They're banned in other countries, but I bet you'll find at least one of them in your fridge right now. 28 superfoods that can help you prevent chronic illnesses. 5 poisons that are used as food additives in several items at your grocery store. And dozens of other tips and tricks that could help you live a longer, healthier life. And here's the best part. The solutions I'll present here are affordable and easy to implement. That means you don't have to worry about forking over thousands of dollars a year to switch to foods with fancy organic labels. With these secrets, you'll be able to eat all your favorite food without falling into the many traps of our dangerous food system. I'll even show you how to get healthy, mouth-watering food for just pennies on the dollar. But I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. Before I get into these solutions, I think it's important you understand the true scale of the problem. So let me ask you, have you noticed we're getting sicker than ever before? Americans get sick more often than Europeans and people in other industrialized countries. And since the mid-1990s, the number of Americans suffering from chronic diseases, such as heart disease, asthma, cancer, and diabetes, has nearly doubled. America's infant mortality has increased and lifespan has plunged. Why is this happening? What has changed over the last 2 decades that could possibly explain this huge downward spiral in the health of our nation? Well, one thing definitely changed in the mid-1990s: the food we eat. A little over 20 years ago, scientists started tinkering with our food supply, taking genes from one species and forcing it into the DNA of other species, creating new organisms that did not exist in nature, organisms that are now part of the majority of the food we eat. I'm talking about crops that have been genetically engineered to either produce their own pesticides or withstand mega doses of herbicides. They came with the promise they would increase crop yields and profits, so many in the farm community welcomed this innovation. As a result, starting in 1996, these genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, spread rapidly through U.S. fields. This was also a big bonanza for the biotech firms that developed these crops. You see, genetically engineered seeds are patentable, so the companies that develop these seeds can have total control of the market. This represents billions in sales. For example, take a look at a company named Monsanto. With a 90% market share, it dominates the GMO industry, and farmers who purchase Monsanto's patented GMO seeds have to sign a contract. This agreement forbids farmers from keeping any new seed produced by the crop for the following year, or even saving leftover seeds. In other words, farmers must agree to use the seeds for one time only. This basically ensures a perpetual stream of cash flow for the company because farmers will have to buy new seeds every year. It was a win-win situation for the farmers and biotech firms. The farmers get bigger crops that can grow in any conditions. The biotech firms make money selling their seeds. And boy, did it produce profits. Take a look at this chart of Monsanto's share price over the past 15 years. My point is this. A lot of people got very rich and very powerful selling these genetically modified crops. There's a lot of money at stake here. But here's the scary thing. According to new scientific evidence, these genetically modified crops may be extremely dangerous to our families. And just like people used to smoke cigarettes because they had no idea it could kill them, most Americans today are eating this food because they are unaware of the risks. They do it because government agencies such as the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, have said these genetically modified crops are safe. But can we trust them? Well, as you will see in this presentation, the FDA has actually never conducted any studies on humans to prove this food is safe. In other words, this government agency has intentionally unleashed a host of potentially harmful foods onto American dinner tables. I know this may be hard to believe, but 44,000 pages of internal memos from the FDA show its own scientists agreed that GMOs could create unpredictable, unsafe, and hard-to-detect allergens, toxins, diseases, and nutritional problems. In a moment, I'll reveal all the details of these disturbing memos, including details from a little-known document marked as Confidential Read and Destroy by one of the biggest GMO firms. Believe me, this is the smoking gun they hoped we'd never find. You'll see the details and be able to make up your own mind on whether I'm right or wrong. And then I'll tell you exactly what kind of foods you should avoid, including the 4-letter word you need to look for on your milk cartons. I've already went through my own fridge and pantry to protect my wife and 4 kids. I suggest you do the same. But before we get to those things you need to look out for, let me tell you about the secret killer in your food. Did you know that about 80% of your immune system resides in your gut? And of course, the gut is the main interface between our body and any kind of food. So if for any reason your body sees food as an alien object, something that cannot be found in nature, your immune system might attack it, creating an inflammatory reaction. In other words, inflammation flares up whenever your body feels threatened. Well, it turns out since 1996, when GM foods were introduced into our diet, several digestive disorders related to gut inflammation have skyrocketed. Take a look. Is this just a coincidence? Well, then think about this for a moment. Scientists have changed the gene sequence of some of the food that we eat, making it a foreign object. So it shouldn't be a surprise that our immune system might be reacting to this new kind of food, causing inflammation. And that's a big deal because the health damages can go well beyond diseases related to digestion. You see, inflammation has been linked to a number of health problems. In fact, recent medical research shows that hidden inflammation, the kind that originates in your gut, is at the root of all chronic illness we experience. Conditions like heart disease, obesity, diabetes, dementia, depression, cancer, and even autism. Maybe that explains why autism has increased 600% since GM foods came on the market, or why the number of Americans with diabetes has nearly tripled in the past 2 decades. That's why Time magazine has called inflammation the secret killer. According to the magazine, it destabilizes cholesterol deposits in the coronary arteries, leading to heart attacks and potentially even strokes. It chews up nerve cells in the brains of Alzheimer's victims. It may even foster the proliferation of abnormal cells and facilitate their transformation into cancer. In other words, chronic inflammation may be the engine that drives many of the most feared illnesses of middle and old age. For me, it was shocking to find out that the food my family was eating, the food I fed my 2 boys and girls when they were growing up, could cause inflammation to lead to all those deadly diseases. But the science is clear. Inflammation happens for a reason. It happens when a bacterium or toxin or some other irritant triggers an immune response. And several studies have shown that genetically modified food is triggering that response. For example, Dr. P.M. Bhargava, one of the world's top biologists, has reviewed 600 scientific journals. He concluded that GM foods in the U.S. are largely responsible for the increase in many serious diseases. And Dr. Robin Bernhoft, a Harvard-trained doctor and director of the Bernhoft Center for Advanced Medicine in Ojai, California, has found that patient health improves when GM foods are removed from their diet. Dr. Miguel Gonzalez, a physician in California, believes that genetically modified foods are causing inflammation of the bowel. And research from the American Academy of Environmental Medicine states that several animal studies indicate serious health risks associated with GM food consumption, including infertility, immune dysfunction, accelerated aging, dysfunction of cholesterol synthesis, insulin regulation, and protein formation, and changes in the liver, kidney, spleen, and gastrointestinal system. As you can see, many scientists believe that GM food is what's triggering inflammation. And if you don't address that properly, you may end up with coronary artery disease, arthritis, cancer, and other chronic illnesses. In a moment, I'll show you 10 natural ways to reduce inflammation in your body. I'll even give you the name of some foods that not only fight inflammation, but can also protect you against arthritis and diabetes. But first, let me warn you. The list of foods that can potentially be dangerous to your health is much longer than you can probably imagine. Whether you realize it or not, there's a good chance you're eating genetically modified foods every day. For example, let's look at milk, the traditional symbol of purity and nutrition. For the past 20 years, much of the nation's milk has come from cows injected with a genetically engineered growth hormone known as RBST. Write those letters down, RBST. After we're done here today, you should go to your fridge and take a look at the milk you have. Make sure your milk is RBST free. Again, it's RBST. But before you go check, let me explain how dangerous those letters can be. Farmers inject RBST into cows every 2 weeks to increase hormonal activity, boosting milk production by as much as 25%. That's great for dairy producers, who are able to get more milk from each cow, increasing their profits. It's also great for the biotech companies that sell the hormone. There's only one big problem. This hormone has been linked to various types of cancer. That probably explains why all 27 countries of the European Union, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada have all banned its use in milk destined for human consumption. Sadly, the U.S. is the only developed nation that allows RBST. The Cancer Prevention Coalition has even submitted several petitions to the FDA asking them to ban this hormone. but the FDA has ignored their requests. Maybe that explains why the U.S. has the highest rates of cancer in the world. A study done by Susan Hackinson, SCD of Harvard Medical School, has showed that this hormone increases the risk of developing breast cancer 7-fold in women under 50, and that it increases a man's risk of developing prostate cancer 9-fold. Dr. Jenny Pompilo, a physician with Kaiser Permanente in Oregon, says, "It's been known for years that this particular hormone is linked with cancer because of its effect on the endocrine system." Now, if you're like me, you're probably asking yourself, how in the hell has the FDA approved this? You would think that after approving it, the FDA would at least slap a label on RBST milk saying something like, "Warning, could cause cancer." But that's not what happened. Dairies that use this dangerous hormone don't even have to disclose that information to consumers. And the FDA didn't stop at forbidding GM labeling. It went one step further. In 1994, they wrote a regulation requiring that any food label describing the product as bovine growth hormone free must also include these words. The FDA has determined no significant difference has been shown between milk derived from RBST and non-RBST treated cows. So the FDA basically restricted dairies that didn't use the hormone from pointing out that their milk was different from the genetically modified kind. Maybe you've seen this statement on your jug of milk, and since it comes from the FDA, I bet you believed in it, like I did. But did you know that this RBST statement has never been verified by either Monsanto or FDA studies? If a private company had made such a statement, it would have been charged with fraud. And it gets worse. The FDA consistently covered up warnings from its own scientists about the health hazards of GMOs. The details are buried inside 44,000 pages of FDA's internal files. I'll reveal the content of these documents in a moment. First, it's important that you understand that the approval of RBST reveals one of the biggest government lies: the food we eat is safe. You see, the FDA didn't perform any kind of testing in regards to RBST. FDA official John Sheed later admitted to the Associated Press that the agency based their approval simply on a summary provided by Monsanto. Former FDA veterinarian Richard Burrows, who was a lead reviewer in this hormone's approval process, said the drug was approved prematurely without adequate information, and that the whole RBST thing was bad science and bad regulation. The European Union even investigated the FDA's faulty approval process and concluded that the hormone's safety had never been proved. Canadian scientists also analyzed FDA's approval process and wrote a lengthy and scathing report. If you Google GAPS analysis report, you can read it online. The report recounted omissions, contradictions, weaknesses, and gaps in the FDA's approval process. It concluded that the required long-term studies to ascertain human safety were not conducted. Hence, the risk of sterility, infertility, birth defects, cancer, and immunological disorder was not addressed. Are you starting to see how dangerous this food scandal is? Thanks to the FDA, you may have unknowingly drunk countless glasses of dangerous substance, or poured it into bowls of cereal for your children and grandchildren. And, to this date, the agency continues to allow milk from cows treated with RBST. Unless it's labeled organic or RBST-free, everything in the dairy section of your grocery store, including yogurt and cheese, probably includes milk from cows injected with this hormone. Unfortunately, milk is just the tip of the iceberg. With the help of the FDA, GMOs have spread throughout our food supply. It's virtually everywhere. The obvious question is, why would the FDA put Americans at risk? Well, it turns out the Deputy Commissioner for Policy at the FDA in 1993 had strong links to Monsanto. He had worked for the company before joining the FDA. In fact, after helping secure the approval of RBST, he went back to Monsanto to work as its vice president for public policy. Today, he's once again at the FDA, working closely with the Obama administration on food safety. You just can't make this stuff up. And over the past 2 decades, the FDA has been doing everything it can to keep us in the dark, to keep us from finding out how dangerous GM foods really are. As a result, we've all become unwitting guinea pigs in an experiment of massive proportions. Take soybeans, for example. Scientists took genes from bacteria and inserted into the DNA of soy, creating a new kind of crop that can withstand mega doses of an herbicide called Roundup. They call it Roundup Ready Soy, and it accounts for 94% of soybeans in the U.S. So farmers can spray these crops as often as they like. The herbicide will kill all weeds, but leave the soy plants intact. This is great because the farmers who buy Roundup Ready Soy also have to buy Roundup, which is the company's best-selling herbicide. As you can probably imagine, this scheme is very lucrative for biotech companies. The only problem is that new studies show that GM soy can be dangerous to your health. You might say, but I don't eat a lot of soy products, so what's the big deal? Well, did you know soy is in 1,000 places we might never expect it, usually in the form of vegetable oil? You'll find it in salad dressings, soups, and imitation meat products too. In fact, if you or anyone in your family eats any kind of processed food, such as cereals, cookies, cakes, chips, crackers, muffins, mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, it's very likely you're eating genetically modified soy. And numerous studies with animals have showed that it can cause damages in the liver, lung, and pancreas. UK scientists at the York Nutritional Laboratory have linked GM soy to digestion problems, headache, lethargy, acne, and eczema. And they sounded the alarm saying that their findings provide real evidence that GM food could have a tangible, harmful impact on the human body. And a human study from the U.S. National Academy of Sciences said that parts of the altered gene in GM soy went on to live in your gut. The study concluded that this has the potential to change our immune system in unpredictable ways. Dr. John Boyles, an allergy specialist from Ohio, says, GM soy is so dangerous that I tell people never to eat it. Even babies are at risk, because soy is used in 25% of all baby formula in the U.S. Dr. Daniel Sheehan, a toxicologist formerly with the FDA, has warned that infants who drink this formula are part of a large, uncontrolled, and basically unmonitored human-infant experiment. So how can you get around this problem? Well, one easy step you can take is to avoid processed or packaged foods. You see, aside from soybeans, in the U.S., 90% of sugar beets and 88% of corn are also genetically modified. These items are basic components of pretty much everything you can find in the grocery store. So every time you or your family eat processed or packaged food, there's a good chance you're taking a bite of a GM ingredient. And that's just one simple solution. In a moment, I'll show you more than a dozen food secrets that will help you avoid GM food and improve your life. As I mentioned earlier, I can't guarantee that they will make you live to be 100 years old, but I can promise that you'll be greatly better off than those who continue to eat potentially dangerous food. First, let me show you why. You could be eating a dangerous toxin every day. Just like soy, corn also seems to be everywhere. High fructose corn syrup lurks in foods that don't seem corny to us: candy, breads, ketchup, granola bars, and even English muffins. While soy has been genetically modified to withstand herbicides, corn has been genetically modified to produce its own insecticide. Scientists took genes from a bacterium that produces insecticide and inserted it into corn. With that new genetic material, the corn can produce its own bacterial toxins called Bt protein. It's a toxin that's designed to break open the stomach of insects that try to eat the corn. So the corn cells produce a toxin protein that kills bugs. The crop itself is the pesticide. Now, when I discovered this information, the first thing that came to my mind was, wait a second, if this toxin destroys the insect's gut, could it do the same to me and my family? According to the FDA, this corn is safe. They say Bt protein is toxic only to insects, but there's new evidence that shows Bt protein could damage humans as well. A recent study published in the International Journal of Biological Sciences concluded that GM corn damages the liver and kidneys. The Journal of Hematology Diseases published research showing that it destroys red blood cells, disrupts blood clotting, and can cause organ degeneration and tissue damage in mice. Joe Cummings, Professor Emeritus of Genetics at the University of Western Ontario, has also concluded that the Bt toxin could damage the small intestine. And UK's Institute of Science and Society has said that Bt kills human kidney cells and that its approval was based on inadequate safety assessments. No wonder genetically modified corn is already outlawed in Hungary, Austria, Germany, Greece, and Luxembourg. But Americans are unknowingly consuming this Bt toxin every single time they eat something that has GM corn in it. Just look at these rats. They were fed genetically modified corn, the same corn you buy from the grocery store, and feed your family. In this particular study, GM corn caused rats to develop horrifying tumors, widespread organ damage, and premature death. Rats that ate GM corn saw 4 times the number of deaths and an 80% increase in cancer compared to those that ate conventional corn. Despite all this shocking evidence, agricultural companies and the FDA continue to claim that GM corn is safe because, according to them, our body naturally degrades the Bt toxin. If that's true, then how can you explain the fact that toxic pesticides from GM food crops have been found in unborn babies? In a study that analyzed dozens of samples from women, scientists found traces of the toxin in 93% of the pregnant mothers and in 80% of the umbilical cords. The research suggested the chemicals were entering the body through eating meat, milk, and eggs from farm livestock that were fed GM corn. And UK's The Telegraph reported that the study's conclusion appears to contradict the food industry's long-standing claim that any potentially harmful chemicals added to crops would pass safely through the body. If you have kids in your family, I'm sure you know exactly how I felt when I discovered all this shocking information. Because perhaps the most disturbing fact about our food supply is that our little ones are at risk. Are your children or grandchildren suffering from chronic ear infections, coughs, runny noses, and headaches, eczema and itchy skin, or frequent sleepiness, crankiness, or sickness? If they suffer from symptoms like these, maybe their immune system is overreacting to the hormones in that apparently healthy glass of milk, or that soy protein that's virtually in every processed food, or to the high fructose corn syrup that sweetens everything from sugar-free cereals to whole wheat bread. You see, kids are much more sensitive to toxins, so they're very vulnerable to GM food. Perhaps that explains why in the last 20 years, the incidence of childhood ailments like food allergies, asthma, ADHD, and autism have increased dramatically in the U.S. During our research, we came across the opinion of a pediatrician who has been treating children for over 30 years. She has also been named one of America's top pediatricians by the Consumers Research Council of America. She says that over the last decade, she has seen a huge jump in the number of children with chronic diseases, digestive issues, profound food allergies, increased immunological disorders, inflammatory bowel disease, and more. She believes GM food is behind this epidemic. And according to her, we are a living science experiment. Take food allergies, for example. Think back to when you were younger. How many of your friends had peanut allergies? Did your brother or sisters have to carry around an EpiPen? Did they have to be ready to shoot their bodies full of adrenaline if they ate something wrong? When I was growing up, food allergies were extremely rare. In fact, I don't remember having any childhood friends who were allergic to nuts. But today, we can't send our children to school with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because chances are a kid in their class is deadly allergic to peanuts, or one of the other new allergies that are popping up like crazy. And it's not just our anecdotal proof we have. Science now verifies that something has gone horribly wrong with our food supply. Dr. Jacqueline Pongrasic, head of the allergy department at Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago, says, "I've been treating children in the field of allergy immunology for 15 years, and in recent years, I've really seen the rates of food allergies skyrocket. More than half of the children I care for have a food allergy." According to the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, food allergies affect more than 6 million children in America. That's twice the number of cases recorded in 2007. So again, what's gone wrong? Well, after months of research, I believe it all comes back to this genetically modified food we're putting into our bodies. Peanut allergy alone kills hundreds of American kids each year, and its incidence has increased tenfold since 1997, the year GM soy was introduced into the marketplace. According to the Center for Disease Control, the number of hospitalizations related to food allergies has also increased 265% in the decade following the introduction of GM food. And a study published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology concluded that genetically modified peanuts and soybeans can trigger allergic reactions in the human body. In other words, all these studies suggest that, in many occasions, our kids' immune system perceives GM food as a threat, which leads to allergies. They suggest the consumption of GM food explains the current food allergy epidemic. In a minute, I'll show you which foods are safe for your children and grandchildren, and which ones you should avoid, including 3 popular kids' food you should never feed your little ones. But first, there's something I need to address. After all the shocking evidence I just showed you here, I'm sure by now you're asking, why isn't this being shouted from the rooftops? Well, once you understand the strong link between government and big corporations that produce GM food, the answer is not exactly a surprise. But that doesn't make it any less disturbing. Big corporations, lobbyists, and politicians will do anything to keep you in the dark. Why? Because there's big money involved. That's the cold truth of our food supply. If word gets out that genetically modified foods are potentially dangerous, the food companies' billions of dollars in profits will be in serious jeopardy. The genetically modified crop market is huge. In the last decade alone, Monsanto, which controls 90% of the market, has made more than $116 billion in sales. And they use a lot of that money to make sure nobody will interfere with their business. For example, in recent years, they have spent over $52 million in lobbying to make sure they get the most favorable legislation possible. And that has paid off. As the New York Times said, the White House worked behind the scenes to help Monsanto get the regulations that it wanted. The company is also a very prolific user of Washington, D.C.'s revolving door. The FDA, for example, welcomes past and future executives from the food industry. In other words, giant corporations literally send employees to go work for the FDA and other regulatory agencies, where they can write food policies that will favor the companies. To this date, the current Deputy Commissioner for Policy at the FDA is a former Monsanto employee. As a key regulator in charge of food safety, he has the ability to control what does and doesn't show up on your family's table. Don't you think that having someone from one of these corporations in charge of food policies represents a huge conflict of interest? Thanks to these intimate links with government agencies, food corporations could be using you and your family as lab rats. In 1992, when the FDA approved GMOs, the agency claimed there was an overall consensus among scientists that GM food was safe. But now we know that's a big lie. In 1998, a lawsuit forced 44,000 pages of internal files from the FDA into the public domain. These memos reveal that the consensus was the exact opposite. Scientists urged the FDA to do long-term safety studies to guard against possible allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. For example, FDA scientists recommended testing every GM food before it enters the marketplace because of the possibility of unexpected, accidental changes in genetically engineered plants. According to one of the memos, Dr. Linda Kahl, an FDA compliance officer, warned the agency that the processes of genetic engineering lead to different risks. And Dr. Jim Mariinsky, the FDA biotechnology coordinator at the time, admitted that there was no consensus about the safety of genetically engineered foods in the scientific community. But bureaucrats at the FDA ignored the scientists' warnings and allowed GM food crops onto the market. Dr. Mariinsky also admitted that the approval of GMOs was based on politics, not science. He said that the determination whether a new protein is safe can be made by the company. In other words, the FDA, the agency so many naive Americans think is here to protect us, allowed food companies to determine the safety of GM food. But one of Monsanto's own executives said at the time that Monsanto should not have to vouch for the safety of biotech food. Our interest is in selling as much of it as possible. Dr. Philip Riegel, a professor at the University of Minnesota and an internationally recognized plant expert, once stated, "Over the last 15 years, I and other scientists have put the FDA on notice about the potential dangers of genetically engineered foods." According to Andrew Kimbrell, who at the time was executive director of the International Center for Technology Assessment, by failing to require testing and labeling of genetically engineered foods, the FDA has made consumers unknowing guinea pigs for potential harmful food substances. And a report by 8 renowned international experts concluded that agricultural GM companies and evaluation committees systematically overlook the side effects of GMOs and pesticides. The study also says they greatly underestimate the initial signs of diseases like cancer and diseases of the hormonal, immune, nervous, and reproductive systems, among others. And it gets worse. The food industry's control goes well beyond the government, so let me show you exactly how it keeps the American public in the dark. Big food companies provide funding to most food research, conferences, and fellowships. This private funding certainly seems to affect the way professors and scientists think, act, and publish. Researchers have a huge incentive to write only good things about GM crops, otherwise they may lose funding, or even worse, their jobs. A study from Food and Water Watch concluded that this corporate funding taints the independence and objectivity of agricultural research. These companies have also been systematically blocking researchers from using its patented gene-modified seeds. According to Doug Sherman of the Union of Concerned Scientists, multi-billion-dollar agricultural corporations, including Monsanto and Syngenta, have often refused to provide independent scientists with seeds, or they've set restrictive conditions that severely limit research options. 26 researchers from different universities even wrote a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency protesting restricted access to seeds. The letter states that no truly independent research can be legally conducted on many critical questions involving these crops. The biotech industry is completely driving the bus. The magazine Scientific American has also reported that only studies that the seed companies have approved ever see the light of a peer-reviewed journal. In a number of cases, experiments that had the implicit go-ahead from the seed company were later blocked from publication because the results were not good. In other words, these companies basically choose who gets to do research and what topics are studied and published. They also try to destroy the reputation and careers of any scientists who stand in their way. Perhaps biologist Arpad Pusztai is the best example. He had more than 300 articles and 12 books to his credit, and was the world's top expert in his field. In the 1990s, he conducted a study that showed that rats that ate GM potatoes developed potentially precancerous cell growth, smaller brains and testicles, partially atrophied livers, and damaged immune systems. After his shocking discovery, he decided to reveal his findings on national TV. 2 days later, he was fired and silenced with threats of a lawsuit. His team was dismantled, and the government, with the help of big corporations, launched a smear campaign to destroy his reputation. Many other scientists have been threatened and fired from their jobs as well. That's why University of California at Berkeley professor Ignacio Chapela says that it's very hard for us to publish in this field. People are scared. That's a big reason why most Americans have no idea how dangerous GM foods are. We don't even have the right to know what's in our food. For years, polls have shown that about 93% of Americans support the labeling of foods that contain genetically modified organisms. But the biotech industry, with the help of the FDA, has decided that we don't need to know when there are potentially harmful ingredients in our food. So GM foods are not required to carry identifying labels. We are being denied the fundamental right to know what's in our food, a right that more than 50 other nations, including China and Russia, offer their citizens. It's estimated that 70% of processed foods contains genetically modified organisms. But because of the lack of labels, Americans have no clue. By keeping us completely in the dark, these GMO companies are essentially controlling our diet. As a result, millions of American infants, children, and adults are unknowingly consuming potentially dangerous food products each day. But you and your family don't have to be victims. There are a surprising number of simple things you can do to avoid the dangers of our corrupt food system. And after hundreds of hours of research, my staff compiled the best of the best actionable solutions into a book called Non-GMO Guide: Food Secrets for a Long and Healthy Life. You see, I'm the director of a fast-growing organization called the Laissez-Faire Letter. Laissez-faire is a French term. It simply means let it be or leave it alone. As in, leave our food alone as nature intended it. Leave our banking and financial systems alone so they're not manipulated. Leave our computers alone and don't spy on us. And generally, to leave us alone to live free lives where we're able to make our own choices. Our latest mission is publishing the just-released version of Non-GMO Guide: Food Secrets for a Long and Healthy Life. But here's the thing. This specific book isn't for sale, not anywhere in the world, and not for any price. But I believe the truth about the dangers of our food supply is so important that I've made this information available to you. So today, through this message only, I would like to send you this life-saving information at no cost whatsoever. That's right, this book is completely free as my gift to you. You won't even pay shipping and handling. In a moment, I'll explain how to claim your copy at my expense. But first, I want to show you a few steps you should start taking right away. Remember, the longer you eat these dangerous foods, the higher the risk they could damage your health. And the good thing is, these moves are easy and fairly straightforward to implement. So here are the specific steps you should take. Step number 1, never eat these 10 foods. As I showed you in this presentation, there are dangers lurking at every single corner of your grocery store. In fact, some of these foods are so dangerous that they have been banned in other countries. I already told you about milk from cows treated with RBST, a hormone that has been linked to cancer. It has been banned in more than 30 countries, but it's legal here in the U.S. And remember, dairy products like cheese and yogurt can also come from cows injected with this dangerous bovine growth hormone. So if your milk is not labeled organic or non-GMO project verified, you should look for labeling stating no RBST or artificial hormones. But RBST milk is just the tip of the iceberg. I've compiled a list of 10 foods you should never eat. You'll find all the details in Chapter 4 of your free book called Non-GMO Guide, Food Secrets for a Long and Healthy Life. For example, I'll tell you about a dangerous chemical that has already poisoned 1,700 people. For that reason, it's banned in 160 countries, but you'll find it in some types of meats in the U.S. A synthetic chemical that can cause skin rashes, acne, loss of appetite, fatigue, and cardiac arrhythmias. It's banned in Europe and Japan, but in the U.S., you'll find it in several popular drinks sold at your grocery store. 3 popular kids' foods to never feed your children and grandchildren. They contain substances that have been linked to cancer and behavioral problems. A chemical that has been linked to kidney and nervous system damage, thyroid problems, and cancer. It's banned in Canada, China, and the European Union, but in the U.S., it's a hidden ingredient in some types of breads. A substance that has been banned in the UK and Canada, but it's in many fat-free products in the U.S. It's so dangerous that Time magazine called it one of the worst 50 inventions ever. The one fruit that's banned across the European Union, but still legal in the U.S. It could be in your fridge right now, waiting for you to take the next bite. A dangerous type of fish that can potentially damage your eyesight. It's banned in Australia and New Zealand, but very popular here in the U.S. And much, much more. And that's just one chapter. The book is full of food secrets like these, secrets that could help you live a healthier, longer life, regardless of what the FDA is doing. In a moment, I'll show you how to claim your free book, but first, I want to move on to another solution that's easy for you to implement. Step number 2. Avoid these 5 poisons approved by the FDA. As you can probably tell by now, the FDA has failed terribly at protecting consumers from dangerous foods. Even the own agency admitted that it does not have the capacity to ensure the safety of food for the nation. And many FDA employees have stated that the agency actively harms public health in order to protect corporate interests. In the most recent scandal, the FDA has admitted that chicken meat sold in the USA contains arsenic, a cancer-causing toxic chemical that's fatal in high doses. So GMOs are not the only problems in our food supply. The truth is, the FDA permits the use of several chemicals that have been linked to cancer, heart disease, and other health problems. For example, sodium nitrate is a chemical that's added to food to help preserve it. You'll find it in processed meats such as bacon, ham, corned beef, hot dogs, and much more. But it's a toxin that can be damaging to your health. According to the American Medical Association, a diet high in sodium nitrates may lead to fatal respiratory problems and gastrointestinal and brain cancer. So make sure you restrict your intake of foods that carry this toxin. But that's not the only dangerous chemical the FDA has allowed to creep into our food. Besides sodium nitrate, I've identified 4 other dangerous secret ingredients you should watch out for. Make sure they don't make it into your grocery cart. You'll find all the details in Chapter 5 of your personal copy of Non-GMO Guide, Food Secrets for a Long and Healthy Life. Inside, I'll tell you about an ingredient that's used in food as a flavor enhancer, but that has been strongly linked to nerve damage, brain cancer, and obesity. It's very common in soups, salad dressings, and chips. A substance that has been added to food to increase shelf life, but that could lead to high blood pressure and diabetes. Simply cut this from your diet, and your heart may tick away reliably for decades to come. 2 artificial sweeteners that could cause optic nerve damage, brain damage, and increase your chances of getting lymphoma. Make sure you never use them, and much more. As you can see, there are a lot of scary things lurking in our food supply. But with this list, all you have to do is check the ingredient labels on your foods you buy and make sure you don't have any of these dangerous substances. Simply avoiding these 5 ingredients could help protect you and your loved ones from diseases such as cancer, heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. All this information will be yours free of charge once you claim your book. I'll tell you how to do that in just a minute, but first, there's another step you should take. Step number 3. Use these 10 natural ways to reduce inflammation. As I showed you in this presentation, inflammation has been linked to coronary artery disease, arthritis, cancer, and other chronic illnesses. So I've dedicated a chapter in the book to show you simple ways to reduce inflammation in your body without the side effects that come with drugs. For example, did you know that whole grains, as opposed to white bread, cereal, rice, and pasta, can help keep harmful inflammation under control? But it's not just any product labeled whole grain. In order to get the benefits, the food must list whole grain as the first ingredient and cannot have added sugars. In the book, you'll also discover a natural substance that minimizes chronic inflammation and helps curb stiffness and joint pain. Add this to your diet, and you may finally be able to move with the grace and freedom of youth. It's also affordable and available at your local pharmacy. How to brew at the comfort of your own home a tea that could reduce inflammation and add years to your lifespan. This anti-aging drink is popular in Okinawa, a Japanese island with the world's longest average lifespan. You'll find the recipe on page 27. A natural supplement that will not only supercharge your immune system, but also increase your daily energy up to 10%. This could even make you feel 10 years younger. A unique enzyme that breaks down the byproducts of inflammation, promoting cellular repair. 5 foods that, when consumed in excess, can lead to chronic inflammation. A cleansing liquid that flushes out toxins and reduces inflammation in your body. 28 superfoods that are anti-inflammatory. Just start adding a few of these nutritional powerhouses to your daily diet, and you may be able to stay out of the doctor's office for good. All of this information will help you live a GMO-free life, and with all the food secrets we reveal in this book, you'll be able to opt out of this experiment and take back your health. So far, I've shown you evidence from world-renowned scientists, veterinarians, physicians, farmers, and even former policymakers. Together, they make one heck of a convincing case against genetically modified foods and the biotech invasion into the food industry. But despite all the evidence and the growing concerns of genetically engineered crops, government officials continue to rubber stamp their approval. In other words, you shouldn't expect anyone in the government to ensure the safety of your food. Because our food supply is under control of cronies, giant food corporations that dominate food and farm policy at the White House, USDA, FDA, and EPA. And all they care about is making money. They don't give a damn about your health. That's why I would like to send you a free copy of the book, Non-GMO Guide, Food Secrets for a Long and Healthy Life. In this book, we'll show you everything you need to know to take back your health simply by making smarter choices about your food. No hidden allergens, no cancer-causing hormones, no weird science DNA, just good, healthy food. For example, I'll tell you about the worst thing you can possibly buy at the grocery store. Most people think it's healthy, but unless you buy organic, there's a 99% chance it's contaminated with pesticides, toxins that have been linked to birth defects, nerve damage, cancer, Parkinson's disease, autism, and diabetes. 66 brands of cereals and breakfast bars that have been verified to be GMO-free. A hidden ingredient that can essentially program your brain cells to kill themselves. It's in more than 6,000 grocery store items, including everything from soup mixes to sodas to chewing gum. Make sure this is not listed in the labels of products you buy. A super type of food that, according to Engaged Health Solutions, has 31% lower levels of pesticides, fewer foodborne pathogens, and more phenols, a substance believed to help fight cancer. The one produce that has more pesticides by weight than any other food. It's one of the main staples of the standard American diet. 15 fruits and vegetables that are normally clean from pesticides. A simple stamp that guarantees the safety of your food. Nearly 6,000 products already carry this safety stamp. The only cooking oil that's not genetically modified. It has the power to boost your immune system, lower your cholesterol, prevent strokes, slow down the aging of your heart, fight osteoporosis, and protect you against depression and cancer. 48 brands of bread and bakery items that have been verified to be GMO-free. An easy way to find out if sugar that's listed as an ingredient comes from genetically modified sugar beets, a sweetener that's derived from genetically modified microorganisms. It's found in soft drinks, gum, candy, desserts, yogurt, and some pharmaceuticals such as vitamins and sugar-free cough drops. It has been reported to cause migraines, nausea, depression, fatigue, insomnia, hearing loss, memory loss, and joint pain. 97 invisible GM ingredients. These are hiding in many processed foods. Look for these in the labels next time you buy a packaged food. 12 dirtiest produce items to avoid. These constantly test positive for pesticides. 5 brands of baby formula that contain genetically modified soy, and 9 brands that have 1 or more baby products that have been verified to be GMO-free. The best way to satisfy any sweet cravings, and much more, all explained in clear, easy-to-understand language. We'll happily send it to you right now absolutely free. All we ask in return is that you RSVP at the end of this report to give our monthly publication, Natural Health Solutions, a risk-free try. As I showed